Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. In northwestern Venezuela, near the Catatumbo River, there is a storm that has been raging for centuries, known as the Catatumbo lightning, which strikes at a rate of 280 times per hour, or 1.2 million times per year. In 2012, an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Luo, in Zhejiang province in China, refused to sell their house to make way for a road, so the government built it around them. This type of home is known as a nail house, and they have become symbols of resistance against urban development projects. The avocado is the most nutritious fruit in the world, with more than 25 essential nutrients. So it turns out that extra guacamole is not only tasty, it is good for you. It is rich in healthy fats, fiber, potassium, and vitamins, and has been linked to benefits for cardiovascular health and cholesterol control when consumed in moderation. This is the intact seal of the tomb of Tutankhamun from 1922. It remained intact for 3,245 years. It was discovered by archaeologist Howard Carter and became one of the most important finds in history, as the tomb preserved numerous objects in excellent condition. Barcode scanners actually read the spaces between the black bars, not the black bars themselves. These devices detect patterns of reflected light, since white areas reflect more light than black ones, allowing the encoded information to be interpreted. This system is based on precise contrasts that represent numbers and specific data used in products and inventory systems. This is Gunner, the air-raid mermaid dog. During World War II, he alerted aircraft personnel that Japanese planes were approaching because his hearing was very sharp and precise. He was adopted by the Royal Australian Air Force and became famous for detecting aircraft before the equipment of the time, saving lives by giving early warnings during enemy attacks. Contrary to popular belief, white spots on fingernails are not a sign of excess or deficiency of calcium or zinc or other vitamins in the diet. They are actually called leukonychia, are completely harmless, and are most commonly caused by minor injuries that occur while the nail is growing. There is a species of fungus called the bleeding tooth. It is also called strawberries and cream, and although it is not toxic, it is not edible. But seriously, who would want to try this thing anyway? This fungus secretes a red liquid that looks like blood, which contains compounds with antibacterial properties. It usually grows in coniferous forests, and its unusual appearance has made it one of the most photographed fungi. When he was a freshman in 1987, a man named Mike Hayes convinced a friend who worked at the Chicago Tribune to write an article asking millions of readers to donate 1 cent each for his tuition. Immediately, pennies, nickels, and even larger donations began arriving from around the world. After collecting the equivalent of 2.9 million cents, he graduated and paid for his degree in food science. This is what a turtle skeleton looks like. Unlike other animals, its shell is part of its bone structure, fused with the spine and ribs, which provides exceptional protection and limits its ability to leave it, since it is not an external house, but part of its own body. The most expensive thing ever built is the International Space Station, with a cost of $160 billion. This massive international project, constantly maintained and expanded, brings together several space agencies and continues to accumulate investment over time. The infinite monkey theorem states that a monkey randomly pressing keys on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time will eventually write any text, such as the complete works of William Shakespeare. This concept is used in mathematics and probability theory to illustrate how extremely unlikely events can occur given enough time and possible combinations. There is a building in London called the Walkie-Talkie that has a shape that reflects sunlight like a giant magnifying glass, even melting cars on the street. This effect is due to its curved glass facade, which concentrates the sun's rays in certain spots, forcing the implementation of solutions to reduce the problem. In 1918, a messenger pigeon from World War I named Cher Ami saved the lives of 194 United States soldiers by continuing its mission after losing an eye and a leg and being wounded in the chest. A false awakening is the term used to describe a vivid or convincing dream in which you believe you have woken up when, in reality, you are still asleep. This phenomenon can occur several times in a row and is usually related to deep sleep stages or lucid dreaming experiences. A 17-year-old merino sheep named Shrek in New Zealand escaped and hid in a cave for 7 years. When he was found in 2004, He had 59.97 pounds of wool accumulated, enough to make 20 suits, which turned him into a celebrity in the country. There is a 34-year-old chimpanzee named Kanzi, who not only knows how to start a fire and cook food, but also knows how to prepare omelets. He was raised in a research environment where he learned to communicate using symbols and to imitate complex human behaviors, making him one of the most remarkable examples of intelligence in primates. In Japanese mythology, there is a creature called Ashiarai Yashiki. It is a giant, dirty foot that appears in front of you and demands to be washed. If you do not do it, it causes destruction in your home. These stories are part of traditional folklore and were often told as warnings or strange tales to explain the unknown. Between 350 and 420 million years ago, before trees were common, the Earth was covered with gigantic stem-like fungi. These organisms, known as prototaxids, could reach several feet in height and dominated prehistoric landscapes, and they are still the subject of scientific debate regarding their true classification and role in early terrestrial ecosystems. Many animal shelters do not allow the adoption of black cats around Halloween because most people acquire them on impulse. This measure seeks to prevent later abandonment, as some adoptions are not responsible or permanent. There is also concern about possible mistreatment related to superstitions, so the safety of the animals is prioritized during those dates. The design of the upside-down ketchup bottle was invented by American Paul Brown, earning him $13 million in 1997. His innovation made the product easier to use by taking advantage of gravity, and it was widely adopted by major brands, changing the way millions of people consume sauces around the world. The beautiful white sand beaches you find in Hawaii are mostly made of fish poop. Larger parrotfish produce up to 840 pounds of white sand per year. These fish grind coral while feeding on algae and then expel the remains as fine sand, constantly contributing to the formation of tropical beaches. Ruth Wakefield, who invented the chocolate chip cookie around 1938, sold the idea to Nestle Toll House in exchange for a lifetime supply of chocolate. This agreement also allowed the recipe to spread quickly, as it began to be printed on chocolate packaging. Her creation came about almost by accident when she added chunks of chocolate to the dough, expecting them to melt completely. The use of psychedelic substances, such as LSD, has been studied in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, with some promising results in certain cases. For example, Yehuda Nir reported that, after participating in this type of treatment, he was able to sleep without nightmares for the first time in many years. The Curiosity rover sang Happy Birthday to itself on Mars to commemorate the first anniversary of its landing on the planet in 2013. In reality, the team on Earth programmed a melody using its instruments, turning it into a symbolic moment in space exploration. Mufti Zakaria, a poet, wrote the national anthem of Algeria with his own blood on the walls of his cell after being imprisoned by French imperial forces in 1955. The anthem, titled Kassaman, became a symbol of resistance during the struggle for independence and reflects the strong sense of identity and sacrifice of the Algerian people. This is a Pomsky, a cross between a Pomeranian and a Husky, and it remains approximately the same size throughout its life. Too much cuteness. Although its appearance often resembles a small husky, its size can vary depending on genetics, and its personality combines energy, intelligence, and a playful touch that requires constant attention and exercise. Coal power plants emit 100 times more radiation into the air than nuclear power plants that produce the same amount of energy. This is because coal contains small amounts of radioactive elements such as uranium and thorium, which are released as ash and particles into the environment when burned. Glowing plants are the first commercially available bioluminescent plants and emit enough natural light to be used as a functional light source. These plants have been modified to produce light through processes similar to those of some marine organisms, although their brightness is still dim. Rather than replacing traditional lighting, they represent an experimental advance in sustainable biotechnology. The word jay was used as slang for a dull or foolish person, so anyone who ignored traffic rules and crossed the street illegally was called a jaywalker. The term became popular in the early 20th century in the United States, when campaigns promoted by the automotive industry helped shift responsibility for traffic onto pedestrians. The island of Poveglia in Italy is considered one of the most haunted places in the world, as it was the site of wars, a dumping ground for plague victims, and a psychiatric hospital. In fact, it is so haunted that the Italian government has banned public access. The manchineel tree, native to Florida, is one of the most poisonous trees in the world. In fact, just touching the rainwater that drips from its leaves will burn your skin. Its fruit, which looks like a small apple, can cause intense vomiting and serious damage if ingested. Even its smoke, when burned, irritates the eyes and can cause temporary blindness. In some areas, these trees are marked with signs to prevent accidents. There is a man named James Richards who claims to have traveled to a parallel universe where the Beatles never broke up, and he says he has a mix of songs from that universe called Everyday Chemistry. The album circulates on the internet as a curiosity, made up of tracks that resemble the band's style, which has fueled debates about its real origin and the creativity behind the project. Galalith was an inexpensive synthetic plastic developed in the early 1900s that was made from milk protein. It was odorless, biodegradable, hypoallergenic, and virtually non-flammable. However, unfortunately, because it could not be molded after the plastic hardened, production ended in the 1960s. In 1918, an African-American man named Lawrence C. Jones survived a lynching attempt by a white mob by convincing them of his passion for educating African-American children. The crowd ended up collecting money for his cause. There is a toilet located 8,500 feet above sea level at the top of the Altai Mountain. It serves workers at an isolated weather station and is known as the loneliest toilet in the world. Due to the extreme conditions, access is usually by helicopter, and supplies arrive in limited amounts. In addition, its structure must withstand strong winds and below freezing temperatures for much of the year. The famous Over 9,000 meme, popularized by Dragon Ball Z, is actually a translation error. The original power level was over 8,000. The English version changed the number during dubbing, and that exaggerated line ended up becoming much more iconic and recognizable than the original among fans. Chiune Sugihara was a famous Japanese diplomat who operated in Lithuania during World War II. He helped more than 6,000 Jewish refugees escape to Japanese territory by issuing transit visas, risking his life and that of his family in the process. There is a mushroom in nature called Laetiporus that tastes like chicken, even fried chicken. It is commonly known as chicken of the woods and usually grows on tree trunks. Its fibrous texture and flavor have made it an interesting alternative in cooking, especially for those looking for meat-free options. In 1954, a man named John Thomas Doyle died after jumping from the Golden Gate Bridge. In his note, he left a brief message that said, "Absolutely no other reason except that I have a toothache." The Navy of Mongolia consists of a single tugboat staffed by 7 people, only one of whom knows how to swim. This is because the country is landlocked and its naval activity is limited to inland bodies of water, making its navy one of the most curious and smallest in the world. There is an animal called the rough-skinned newt, whose skin produces a toxin called tetrodotoxin that is so powerful it is approximately 10,000 times stronger than cyanide. This substance can paralyze the nervous system and is the same one found in some pufferfish, serving as a clear defense mechanism against predators. In a strange coincidence, Paul Walker's character in Fast and Furious was named Brian. He died on November 30 in 2013, the same week that Brian from Family Guy died, and both deaths were related to cars. The episode featuring the dog aired a few days later and generated a strong reaction from the public, although his death was part of the storyline and not permanent. In Quebec, Sweden, and Norway, it is illegal to advertise directly to children. This is to prevent companies from encouraging children to beg their parents to buy things. These regulations are part of broader child consumer protection policies, especially in television and digital media, where commercial content aimed at young audiences is limited. Taiwan was one of the first destinations to implement a national free Wi-Fi program for tourists, with thousands of access points distributed across the island. This system, designed to facilitate connectivity for visitors, allowed easy registration and access to the internet in airports, public transportation, and tourist areas, becoming a model later adopted by other countries. There is a secret pool in the Mojave Desert that anyone can use if they manage to find it. There are no roads, trails, or signs leading to it. Good luck. These types of places are usually private or abandoned installations that remain off conventional maps, making them curious destinations for explorers and adventurers. Walmart was originally founded with the intention of selling products made in the United States at foreign prices. That did not last long, did it? Over time, the company expanded its business model globally, prioritizing cost reduction, which led to a greater dependence on international suppliers. Bhumibol Adulyadej, the former king of Thailand, was actually born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the United States in 1927. When he was born, the hospital room where he was delivered was briefly declared Thai territory so that he could technically be born on Thai soil. In North Korea, citizens must choose from 28 government-approved hairstyles. These lists have been promoted as guides for appropriate styles, although in practice, they reflect strict social and cultural norms regarding appearance, especially in public and work environments. Switching $1 bills to $1 coins would save United States taxpayers approximately $4.4 billion over the next 30 years. This is because coins are significantly more durable than paper bills and need to be replaced much less frequently. There is a spa called Bali Heritage Reflexology and Spa in Jakarta, Indonesia, that uses pythons placed on the client's body as a form of massage treatment. The experience is based on the pressure and movement of the snakes, although it is also carried out under supervision. These types of practices aim to attract those seeking unconventional experiences in tourism. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln grew his famous beard after receiving a letter from an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell, who said that all ladies liked whiskers and that they would convince their husbands to vote for him for president. Lincoln replied to the letter and soon adopted the distinctive look that would make him even more recognizable. This is a huge bird nest built on a telephone pole in the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. It is made of branches, grass, and cotton, and it is home to several species of birds. These structures can last for decades and house hundreds of individuals, forming a kind of community with internal compartments that help regulate temperature in such an extreme environment. There is a man in New York City named Rafi Stepanian who searches for gold in sidewalk cracks. Before you laugh, he makes between $500 and $800 a week. So, yes, who is really laughing? This type of activity is based on collecting small particles of precious metals that accidentally fall, especially in areas with jewelry stores. In Tunisia, you can book a night in Luke Skywalker's childhood home, which is a real hotel called Hotel Sidi Driss, for only $10. This location was used as a set in Star Wars and preserves much of its original appearance, making it a popular destination for fans seeking an experience close to the universe of the saga. The rules of most airlines require that the pilot and co-pilot eat different meals. This is just in case one of the meals causes food poisoning. This practice reduces the risk of both becoming incapacitated at the same time and is part of broader safety protocols that also include staggered rest periods and constant monitoring during the flight. In Armenia, all children older than 6 years learn chess in school as a mandatory part of the curriculum. This initiative was implemented nationwide in 2011 and aims to develop skills such as concentration, logic, and decision-making from an early age. A man named Bob Kirstein originally bought the domain Windows 2000, which Microsoft wanted at the time. However, it turned out that Microsoft owned Bob.com, which Kirstein wanted, and they eventually reached an agreement to exchange one for the other. In 2011, the Kabul family lost their 3 children in a car accident. However, 1 year later, the mother gave birth to triplets, 2 girls and 1 boy. The story moved many people, becoming a symbol of resilience and how some families find hope even after deeply painful experiences. The Centennial Light, located at the Livermore Fire Station, has remained lit almost continuously since 1901, making it the longest-lasting light bulb in the world, according to Guinness World Records. With more than 120 years of operation, it has only been turned off on a few occasions, usually due to relocations or power outages, and has become a symbol of durability and efficiency. In 1976, a Greek war veteran named Stamatis Moraitis was diagnosed with cancer and given 6 months to live. 10 years later, he returned to the doctors to tell them he was still alive, only to discover that all the doctors who had diagnosed him had died. He lived to be 102 years old. The longest recorded sniper shot was made from 8,120 feet by British soldier Craig Harrison. The bullet took more than 6 seconds to reach its target and dropped approximately 400 feet due to gravity. The official biography of the late North Korean leader Kim Jong-il claims that he achieved a round of golf with 38 strokes, that he could control the weather, that he did not need to use the bathroom, and that he invented the hamburger. These claims are part of state propaganda, designed to build an almost supernatural image of its leaders among the population. There is a school called Ordinary Miracle in Yoshkar-Ola, Russia, that looks like a fairy tale castle. A man named Sergei Mamayev had it built for his wife, who wanted to teach at a school that children would actually want to attend. Forget going to school there, I want to live there like a princess. If New York City were a country and the New York Police Department were its army, it would be the 20th best-funded military in the world, just behind Greece and ahead of North Korea. Its annual budget exceeds several $billions, including equipment, advanced technology, and one of the largest uniformed police forces, with tens of thousands of active officers. Until its demolition in 2012, 1% of the population of Greenland lived in a single apartment building called Block P. This massive block in Nuuk housed hundreds of people and was built in the 1960s as part of a Danish urbanization plan, although over time it became a symbol of social problems and difficult living conditions. Leonardo DiCaprio was named that way because his pregnant mother was looking at a painting by Leonardo da Vinci in Italy when he gave his first kick. The moment felt so meaningful to her that she decided to choose that name, which would later become recognized worldwide in film. In Finland, when you earn your doctorate, you are given a doctoral hat that looks like a top hat, as well as a doctoral sword like a true knight. This academic ritual symbolizes scientific freedom and the defense of knowledge. The hat represents intellectual authority, while the sword reflects the responsibility to protect truth and ethics in research. Brass door handles disinfect themselves in 8 hours. This is known as the oligodynamic effect. This phenomenon allows metals such as copper and its alloys to eliminate bacteria and some viruses by releasing ions that damage their structures, which is why they have historically been used in hospitals and public spaces to reduce the spread of disease. During the development of the Macintosh computer, Steve Jobs wanted to include a small, mysterious character that would appear approximately every 1,000 uses of a system element, wink, and disappear so quickly that you would not be sure if you had really seen it. The idea was part of his interest in adding hidden details and memorable experiences, although it was ultimately not implemented to maintain the system's simplicity and coherence. Kim Peek, the inspiration for the movie Rain Man, was born with significant brain damage and read more than 12,000 books, remembering every one of them. He was able to read 2 pages at once, one with each eye, and recall all of their content. Reciprocal liking is a psychological term used to describe when you begin to like someone after discovering that they like you. It is a phenomenon that reflects how people feel better about themselves and enjoy the company of those who give them positive feelings. Sahara sand is carried by the wind to the Amazon, replenishing its minerals. The desert literally fertilizes the rainforest. Each year, it is estimated that tens of millions of tons of dust cross the Atlantic, providing essential phosphorus that compensates for nutrient loss caused by heavy rainfall in the Amazon region. In the 1960s, Orville Redenbacher paid an advertising company $13,000 to come up with a name for his popcorn business. Their advice was to call it, get ready, Orville Redenbacher. Yes, that was a good investment. The Sahara is only in a dry period and is expected to become green again in 15,000 years. This change is part of natural climate cycles related to variations in Earth's orbit, which affect rainfall in the region. In the past, the desert was already a savanna with rivers, lakes, and abundant life. There is a 16-story office building in Osaka, Japan, called the Gate Tower Building, which has an entire highway passing through the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors of the structure. That is interesting architecture. The road does not directly touch the building, as it is supported by its own structure and includes insulation to reduce noise and vibrations inside the offices. In the 1960s, in the United States, an experiment was conducted in which 2 people without specialized training in the nuclear field attempted to develop a theoretical design using only publicly available information. The result raised concern at the time, as it showed how accessible certain knowledge could be, prompting debates about security and control of information. A bit unsettling. WOOF, which stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, is an international program that allows people to travel the world with free food and accommodation in exchange for volunteer work on organic farms. German was the second most spoken language in the United States before being suppressed during World War I. In the 19th century, there were newspapers, schools, and even entire communities where it was taught and used daily. But anti-German sentiments during the war led to bans and the rapid disappearance of its public use in many regions. The human brain consumes 20% of the body's energy, but represents only 2% of its weight. This high energy demand is due to the constant activity of neurons, which require energy to process information, maintain vital functions, and coordinate the entire organism. A man named Sogen Kato was believed to be the oldest man in Tokyo until 2010, when officials went to his home to wish him a happy 111 birthday, only to find his mummified remains. It turned out he had been dead for 30 years while his family continued collecting his pension money. That is just not right. In 2005, a documentary called Reversal of Fortune was filmed, in which the filmmakers gave $100,000 in cash to a homeless man named Ted Rodriguez and followed him to see what he would do with the money. Less than 6 months later, he was completely broke and in the same situation as before. The United States street gang, Crips, was originally formed in 1969 as a neighborhood watch to eliminate criminal gangs by force. How ironic. Over time, the group evolved into one of the most well-known gangs in the United States, moving away from its initial purpose and engaging in criminal activities. Stephen Hawking tried to find possible time travelers by organizing a party and sending the invitations after it had already happened. It is not a joke. The idea was that only someone capable of traveling to the past could attend, but no one showed up. The experiment, although curious, also served as a clever way to reflect on the real possibilities of time travel. Experts believe that New York is home to up to 800 languages, making it the most linguistically diverse city in the world. This richness is due to centuries of immigration from different regions, creating communities where rare languages and unique dialects are preserved, some of which have disappeared in their countries of origin. Former United States President Calvin Coolidge enjoyed calling his bodyguards with a bell and then hiding under his desk while they searched for him desperately. He was known for his reserved personality, which made this kind of prank contrast with his public image, showing a more unusual and lesser-known side of his character. In 2013, it was discovered that some bears in Russia have become addicted to inhaling jet fuel from discarded barrels. As a result, they have been known to stalk helicopters for the drops of fuel they leave behind. This behavior is linked to chemical vapors that produce effects similar to intoxication, raising concern about environmental impact and animal health. This is an albino peacock. They are extremely rare. Their white coloration is due to a lack of pigment, which can also affect vision and sensitivity to light. Despite their different appearance, they retain the same behavior and feather display as common peacocks. A study conducted by Loma Linda University in 2010 concluded that laughter not only reduces stress, but also increases the production of antibodies and stimulates the activity of the immune system. It has also been observed to improve mood and promote the release of endorphins, contributing to overall well-being and better long-term health. Inventor Nikola Tesla and writer Mark Twain were great friends and admirers of each other's work. Twain even visited Tesla's laboratory and took part in some of his experiments, fascinated by electricity. Their friendship reflected the connection between science and creativity in a time of great advances. The government of North Korea is one of the largest counterfeiters of 50 and 100 United States dollar bills. These bills, called superdollars, are so similar to the real ones that they have been referred to simply as United States dollars not made by the United States government. Due to an aging population, sales of adult diapers are about to surpass those of baby diapers in Japan. This phenomenon is linked to one of the lowest birth rates in the world and a high life expectancy, which has transformed the market. Some companies have even reduced the production of children's products to focus more on elderly care. Smokers are 4 times more likely to have gray hair in their lives than non-smokers, so do not do it. It is dirty. Various studies have linked smoking to oxidative stress, which accelerates cellular aging and can affect hair pigmentation, in addition to being associated with other visible effects such as premature wrinkles and skin damage. In Cuba, it is mandatory for government vehicles to pick up anyone who is hitchhiking. This measure aims to facilitate transportation in areas where it is limited, promoting shared use of state vehicles as a practical solution for daily mobility. The oldest hotel in the world is the Nishiyama Onsen Keiunkan in Japan. It was founded in the year 705 after Christ and has had 52 generations of the same family operating it since its founding. Over the centuries, it has hosted samurai, feudal lords, and travelers, and is famous for its natural hot springs, which remain its main attraction today. Christmas Island is a small Australian island in the Indian Ocean that every year witnesses the migration of 50 million adult crabs from the forest to reproduce, known as the annual red crab migration. This phenomenon transforms the landscape for several days, and authorities even close roads and build special bridges to allow their passage without interruption. Termites are being studied by scientists at the University of Connecticut and the California Institute of Technology for their ability to break down cellulose and generate hydrogen as a byproduct. Thanks to the microorganisms in their digestive system, these insects have inspired research into new ways of producing renewable energy. Although under experimental conditions they can generate interesting amounts of hydrogen, the exact figure varies, and it is not yet viable on a large scale, but their biological efficiency continues to be of great scientific interest. There is a condition called math anxiety that causes people to perform poorly in mathematics, not because they are incapable, but because their brain enters a state that prevents them from performing calculations. Neuroimaging studies show that areas related to fear and stress are activated, which interferes with working memory and the ability to solve problems in the moment. Before Will Smith starred in The Fresh Prince, he was on the verge of bankruptcy, owing the government $2.8 million. In fact, during the first 3 seasons of the series, he had to pay the tax authorities 70% of his income. There is no federal law requiring expiration dates on canned foods, except for infant formula. In fact, canned foods can remain safe to eat for years after their expiration date. The main reason these dates exist is that companies expect you to throw the product away and buy more. When Shakira was in 2nd grade, she was rejected from the school choir because her music teacher did not believe she could sing and thought she sounded like a goat. Years later, that same vocal style would become one of her most distinctive and recognizable traits worldwide, helping her stand out in the music industry with a unique identity. The creator of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, helped free 2 men who had been wrongly imprisoned by solving their closed cases. He used reasoning and analysis similar to that of his famous character to demonstrate inconsistencies and contribute to their release. Iron Man was created by Stan Lee in 1963, at the height of the Cold War, when people hated war in the military. He did it as a personal challenge to see if he could create a character that everyone would hate and still make them like him. Obviously, he succeeded. Self-made millionaire Harris Rosen adopted a neighborhood in Florida called Tangelo Park. He cut crime in half and increased high school graduation rates from 25 to 100% by offering free daycare and scholarships to all graduates. The program also included family support and early education, becoming a model cited in public policy for its sustained results over decades. The first British spy, known as 007, was actually an astrologer named Dr. John Dee in 1560. He served Queen Elizabeth I as an advisor and used the symbol 007 in his secret communications, where the zeros represented the eyes of the Queen and the 7 his personal signature. In addition to espionage, he also contributed knowledge in navigation and English maritime expansion. In Somalia, during certain periods, there have been reports of informal networks related to maritime piracy, where different people could contribute resources to certain groups and, if operations were successful, receive a share of the profits. These cases have been mentioned as examples of informal economies in complex contexts, although they have also raised international concern due to their implications. A psychologist named Timothy Leary was sent to prison in 1970 and was given a series of tests to determine which prison he should be placed in. Since he himself designed many of the tests, he manipulated his answers to be placed in a low-security prison as a gardener and ended up escaping only 8 months later. In 2011, archaeologists in Italy discovered the remains of a Roman-era couple buried holding hands, an image that moved many for its symbolism. Although it was estimated that they had remained in that position for centuries, later studies revealed that both were men, making the discovery even more unique and intriguing. Sigmund Freud, an Austrian neurologist and the father of psychoanalysis, loved cocaine so much that he used to give it to friends and family. During his early years of research, he even recommended it as a treatment for various conditions before its negative effects and high addictive potential were fully understood. A man named Jonathan Lee Riches obtained a Guinness World Record for having filed the highest number of lawsuits in the world, with more than 26. When he found out about this, he sued the Guinness World Records to have his name removed as the most litigious person in history. The state of Illinois has banned exfoliating facial washes because the microbeads they contain are so small that they pass through water treatment facilities and end up back in the water supply. These microbeads, usually made of plastic, can accumulate in rivers and lakes, affecting aquatic life, so the measure is part of environmental efforts to reduce pollution. Eminem received an offer to star in the science fiction film Elysium, released in 2013, and he was interested, but he turned it down because the director would not accept his only condition, that the film be shot in his hometown, Detroit. The role ended up going to Matt Damon, and the production was filmed mainly in Mexico, maintaining the futuristic visual approach the director had planned from the start. In 1987, a German shepherd dog named Gabby at a zoo in Belgrade saved a zoo employee by fighting and defeating an escaped jaguar. Because of this, a monument was erected in her honor. The incident took place at the city zoo and turned Gabby into a local symbol of bravery, remembered as an animal heroine. An artist from Brooklyn named Zaria Foreman has become famous for using only her fingers to create incredibly realistic paintings of icebergs. Her work is often inspired by polar landscapes and aims to raise awareness about climate change through detailed and emotional representations. Most cats do not like to drink water if it is too close to their food source. Always keep your cat's water and food supplies separate so they do not become dehydrated. This behavior comes from their instincts, as in the wild, they avoid contaminating their water source with food remains or possible bacteria. In 2009, Wikipedia permanently banned the Church of Scientology from editing any article. The measure was taken after detecting repeated edits for promotional purposes and conflicts of interest across multiple pages. It was one of the few institution-level bans on the site and reinforced policies on neutrality and source verification. In 2014, the Department of Transportation in Colorado was forced to change its mile marker from 420 to 399.99. Just to get people to stop stealing the sign. The reason was that the number 420 is popularly associated with cannabis culture, which caused the sign to be constantly taken as a souvenir or joke. There is a town in Norway called Hell that freezes almost every winter. Its name creates curiosity among tourists, as it means hell in English, creating a curious contrast with its cold climate. During winter, there are even snow-covered signs that become popular in photographs. There is a city in Kansas called Gas that was named after the large amount of gas discovered in the area. The city's slogan is, "Do not pass gas, stop and enjoy it." The name came after the discovery of natural gas in the early 20th century, which boosted local growth and gave the city a very peculiar identity. In 2011, Lego produced hundreds of millions of small rubber tires for its sets, reaching such a volume that it became the largest tire manufacturer in the world in terms of units. Although they are tiny and not used in real vehicles, their massive production far exceeds that of any traditional automotive company. In 1983, a 61-year-old potato farmer named Cliff Young, who was not an athlete, won the ultramarathon of 544 miles from Sydney to Melbourne simply because he kept running while the other competitors slept. In 1997, there was a cable channel in the United States called Puppy Channel that for 3 years only broadcast images of puppies playing. The idea was to offer relaxing and positive content, although it did not manage to maintain enough audience to last long-term. Black tomatoes can be grown without any genetic engineering. They are full of beneficial anthocyanins, which are believed to help with obesity, cancer, and diabetes. These dark varieties are obtained through traditional crossbreeding, and their intense color is also related to a higher concentration of natural antioxidants. This is the Angora rabbit. It is one of the oldest types of domestic rabbit, and possibly the fluffiest thing in the world. Its origin dates back to Turkey, and it was highly valued in Europe for its long, silky fur. Unlike other rabbits, it requires frequent care, as its wool grows continuously and can easily become tangled. On Valentine's Day in 2014, a group of single men in Shanghai bought every odd-numbered seat for a screening of the movie Love in Beijing. They did this to prevent couples from sitting together, as a show of support for single people and just to be annoying. A 53-year-old Chinese millionaire works as a street sweeper for $228 a month to set a good example for her children. Despite her wealth, she chose to keep a simple job to teach them the value of effort and discipline, showing that money does not replace the importance of personal responsibility. Romanian tennis player Simona Halep used to have 34 double D breasts until she underwent breast reduction surgery to be more agile while playing. It worked, because since then, she has moved up in the world of tennis rankings. Dr. Dre has made exponentially more money from his deal with Beats than he ever did making music. When the brand was acquired by Apple, the deal became one of the most lucrative for an artist in the entertainment industry. This move solidified his image as a businessman and not just a music producer. According to the FBI, the most common time for a bank robbery in the United States is on Fridays between 9 and 11 in the morning. So yes, take care of your banking before that. This pattern is related to higher customer traffic and cash availability, which increases opportunities for criminals. In 2011, a truck driver from New Zealand named Stephen McCormick fell onto a high-pressure valve that became lodged in his body, inflating him to twice his size and nearly killing him. He survived, but it took 3 full days for the accumulated air to be released. Walt Disney used to visit his parks in disguise and would test ride operators to make sure they were not rushing guests. He was also known for walking through the facilities discreetly to observe details of cleanliness, customer service, and operations, which allowed him to maintain high standards in the visitor experience. In the Victorian era, there were special teacups designed to protect the mustache from getting wet. These cups included a small internal ledge that separated the liquid from facial hair, something very useful at a time when mustaches were a symbol of elegance. They were especially popular in England during the 19th century. The stickers you find on fruit are actually made of edible paper. The glue used to stick them on is food grade, so even if you eat one, you are completely fine. These labels are usually made of materials approved for food contact and use safe inks, and they also include codes that allow the origin and variety of the fruit to be traced for quality control. During the final years of Stalin's life, the environment around him was marked by fear and caution among those close to him. When he suffered a serious health issue, the reaction of his guards and assistants was slow, partly due to fear of acting without authorization. This delay in receiving timely medical attention may have influenced the outcome. Researchers at the University of California in 2013 discovered that 29% of the pollution in San Francisco comes from China. Hazardous air from China can travel to the west coast of America in just a few days if weather conditions are favorable. In 2022, the FIFA World Cup was held in Qatar, with matches in the city of Lusail, a planned urban development that barely existed years before the tournament. Built from scratch for the event, Lusail became the site of the main stadium and a symbol of the country's rapid transformation ahead of one of the most important sporting events in the world. Journalist Sarah Bongiorni and her family tried to live without products made in China for an entire year and discovered that it was almost impossible. They documented their experience in a book called A Year Without Made in China, where they show how difficult it is to avoid products of Chinese origin due to their presence in almost every aspect of everyday life. The longest uninterrupted train journey in the world is 10,563.32 miles from Portugal to Vietnam. This extensive route connects multiple countries and cultures, crossing continents and offering one of the longest and most diverse rail experiences that exist. The pizza called Louis XIII is the most expensive pizza in the world, costing $12,000. Created by chef Renato Viola, he prepares the entire dish in your home. The ingredients include 3 types of caviar, Mediterranean lobster, and red prawns, and the pizza is only 7.9 inches in diameter. In 1979, debris from NASA's Skylab space station fell on the town of Esperance in Western Australia, and the town fined NASA $400 for littering, a fine that was paid. Although the penalty was more symbolic than legal, the event became famous, and years later a United States radio station raised the money to officially settle the unusual fine. The first ticket purchased for the first Comic-Con in New York was by George R.R. Martin in 1964. He was number 1 out of only 30 people. At that time, these events were small gatherings of science fiction and comic fans, far from the massive conventions of today that bring together thousands of people and major entertainment productions. Google rents goats to replace lawnmowers at its headquarters in Mountain View. This practice helps reduce the use of machinery, noise, and emissions, while also being a more environmentally friendly way to maintain green areas. The goats are even guided by a shepherd and dogs, making the process as efficient as it is eye-catching. A study from 2010 conducted by the University of Oxford found that for every person you fall in love with and bring into your life, you lose two close friends. This is because time and emotional attention are redistributed, reducing the frequency of interaction with previous friendships, especially in the early stages of a relationship. In 2013, a 59-year-old man named Alan Markowitz, upset with his ex-wife for being unfaithful, bought a house next to hers and installed a giant statue of a middle finger valued at $7,000, pointing at her home. The case drew media attention due to how unusual it was, and sparked debates about the limits between freedom of expression and neighborhood coexistence. In 1993, a Chinese man named Hu Songwen was diagnosed with kidney failure. In 1999, unable to afford hospital bills, he built his own dialysis machine, which kept him alive for another 13 years. Since then, a new medical insurance system was introduced in China that now covers such treatments. This is the smallest combination lock in the world, created by Ganesh Subramaniam in India. It has a height of 0.12 inches, a circumference of 0.39 inches, a weight of 0.00144 pounds, and features 3 lines of code from 0 to 9. The modern handshake dates back to the 5th century before Christ, when swordsmen greeted each other with their free weapon hand, showing no signs of aggression. This gesture served as a sign of trust and lack of hostile intent, and over time it evolved into a common greeting in many cultures as a symbol of respect and agreement. In 2013, in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, construction workers permanently cemented a truck into the sidewalk after the owner refused to move it. The vehicle was blocking the progress of a project, and after multiple failed attempts to remove it, they decided to continue the work around it, leaving it trapped as a curious consequence of the situation. There are more tigers in captivity in the United States, with 5,000, than those roaming free in the rest of the world, which are only 3,200. In the wild, these animals have been reduced to only a few thousand due to poaching and habitat loss. International conservation programs aim to protect them, although captive breeding does not always directly contribute to their recovery in the wild. There is a student from Pennsylvania State University named Mary Krupa who has the ability to attract squirrels and place hats and earmuffs on them. Her photos became popular on social media because of how unusual and cute they are, although they also sparks debate about the treatment of animals and human intervention in their natural behavior. Hitler planned to rebuild Berlin after World War II to turn it into a neo-Roman cosmopolitan city. It was going to include several ambitious architectural projects, including a building called the People's Hall that measured 951 feet in height and 820 feet in diameter. In January 2014, a 39-year-old man named Ferdinand Puentes survived a plane crash off the coast of Molokai, Hawaii. Not only did he capture everything with his GoPro, but he also managed to take an impressive selfie during the event. He would have been a great YouTuber. The Beatles never supported any form of discrimination throughout their career. Their contracts always stipulated that they had the right to refuse to perform for any segregated audience and demanded equality in their shows. During their tours in the United States in the 1960s, they refused to perform in venues with racial segregation, helping to push changes in those practices. In 2013, a company called Limit Zero created an international zipline measuring 2,362.20 feet between Spain and Portugal. This attraction allows people to cross the border in a matter of seconds, becoming a unique tourist experience that combines adventure with a curious geographical element. 85% of Chinese people share only 100 surnames. In fact, Li and Zhang account for 13% of the entire Chinese population. This concentration is due to a long cultural history in which certain surnames have been passed down for centuries, remaining predominant in different regions of the country. Coffee was so influential in early Turkish culture that the word for breakfast literally means before coffee, and the word for brown means the color of coffee. This reflects the deep social importance of the drink, which was not only part of daily routines, but also of gatherings, traditions, and rituals centered around its preparation and consumption. There is a syndrome called the Tetris effect that occurs when people dedicate so much time and attention to an activity that it begins to shape their thoughts, mental images, and dreams. The term originated from the video game Tetris, when players reported seeing pieces fitting together even outside the game. This phenomenon has also been observed in other repetitive tasks, such as learning a language or practicing music intensely. In a study to improve the design of children's hospitals, Researchers from the University of Sheffield surveyed 250 children about clowns, and all reported dislike or fear of them. This finding influenced the reduction of clown use in pediatric medical environments in some places. Dubai announced in 2014 the ambitious project Mall of the World, a gigantic indoor city with climate-controlled streets and a massive shopping center designed for the region's extreme climate. The plan included a complex of hundreds of thousands of square feet with hotels, entertainment areas, and indoor commercial spaces. However, the project was not developed as originally planned and was transformed into smaller initiatives. Hamburger University is a real institution in Elk Grove, Illinois, where students can earn a degree in hamburgerology. It was founded by Ray Kroc in 1961. In reality, it is a corporate training center for McDonald's, where employees and franchisees are trained in operations, leadership, and management to maintain brand consistency worldwide. This is Sir Niels Olav. He is a penguin who has been an honorary member and mascot of the Norwegian Kingsguard since 1972. He was officially knighted in 2008, but the penguin that was knighted in the ceremony was not the original Niels Olav, since that penguin died in the 1980s and was instead replaced by a 2-year-old penguin from the zoo. Yes, that is weird. Schools that remove strict playground rules are seeing a decrease in bullying, serious injuries, and vandalism, while levels of concentration in class increase. In several studies conducted in Europe and North America, improvements in social skills, greater cooperation among students, and fewer disciplinary conflicts reported by teaching staff throughout the rest of the school day have also been observed. The British Navy uses Britney Spears music to scare off Somali pirates and prevent them from hijacking supertankers off the coast of East Africa. In fact, it is so effective that they rarely need to fire their weapons. The highest-scoring football match recorded by the Guinness World Records was 149-0 between two teams in Madagascar in 2002. It happened because one of the teams began scoring own goals as a protest against a bad refereeing decision. As a result, several players and the coach received sanctions, and the event remains one of the most unusual episodes in sports history. The invention of the fire hydrant is generally attributed to Frederick Graf, although no one knows with 100% certainty who actually patented it. This is because, ironically, the patent for the first fire hydrant was destroyed when the office in Washington, D.C. burned down in 1836. The Gatling gun was invented by Dr. Richard Gatling, who observed that most soldiers who died in the Civil War died from disease rather than gunfire. His intention was that by replacing many soldiers with a machine, the need for large armies would be reduced, and, therefore, exposure to disease would also decrease. In 2014, a man in China bought a first-class ticket on China Eastern Airlines and used it to access the airport VIP lounge, where he ate for free for almost a year. He rescheduled his flight more than 300 times before finally canceling it and receiving a full refund. Thomas Edison taught his second wife, Mina Miller, Morse code so they could communicate in secret by tapping each other's hands when their families were nearby. This method allowed them to exchange discreet messages in public, showing not only their ingenuity, but also the closeness they shared as a couple in a much more formal era. In April of 2014, the Danish government built an exact replica of their country in the online game Minecraft, using 4 billion Minecraft building blocks. It was intended for educational purposes, but within weeks, American players had invaded the game, planting United States flags everywhere and blowing things up. United States. A 24-year-old woman named Michelle Chapman was sentenced to 20 months in prison for sending abusive messages to herself from fake profiles she created to frame her father and his wife. These are the beautiful tulip fields of the Netherlands. Every spring, vast areas fill with vibrant colors that attract tourists from all over the world. In addition to their beauty, tulips have had great economic and cultural importance in the country for centuries. A prison in Indiana allows inmates convicted of murder to adopt cats in their cells to teach them love and compassion toward other living beings. The program has shown reductions in aggressive behavior, fewer disciplinary incidents, and emotional benefits for both inmates and the animals, many of which come from shelters and find a more stable environment there. Taco Bell sold 100 million Doritos Locos Tacos during the first 10 weeks after launch. To put into perspective how incredible that is, it took McDonald's 18 years to sell the same number of hamburgers. People love their tacos. David B. Bleek was a United States soldier who served in the Korean War and received the Medal of Honor for his bravery in combat. During a very intense situation, he protected his fellow soldiers and continued helping a wounded soldier, demonstrating a high level of courage and commitment. His actions were recognized as an extraordinary example of service. In 1975, Professor Jack H. Hetherington of Michigan State University added his cat as a co-author of a theoretical paper he had been working on. He did this because he accidentally used words like we and our in the paper and did not feel like revising it. Yes, that is a bit lazy and crazy. President John F. Kennedy bought 12 Cuban cigars hours before ordering the trade embargo on Cuba in 1962. According to White House records, he asked his assistant to gather more than 1,000 units of his favorite brand before signing the order, showing a lesser-known detail about his personal habits amid a decision of great historical impact. In 1993, a man from Missouri named James Scott intentionally damaged a levee on the Missouri River to delay his wife's return home from work so he could go out partying. Unfortunately, the river ended up flooding 34,500 acres of land, and he was convicted of causing a catastrophe and sentenced to life in prison. In 1567, Hans Steininger, who had one of the longest beards in the world at 4.59 feet, died after breaking his neck when he accidentally stepped on it. He was the mayor of Braunau am Inn and used to roll up his beard to avoid accidents, but during a fire he forgot to do so, leading to the fatal fall that was recorded in chronicles of the time. Until the 1930s, the letter E was used to represent a failing grade in the United States. However, it was changed to F as teachers began to worry that students would confuse E with excellent. When he was a child, Muhammad Ali was denied an autograph by his idol, Sugar Ray Robinson. When he became a professional boxer, he promised never to refuse an autograph request, a promise he kept throughout his career. There is a British man named Nick Hess who suffers from auto-brewery syndrome, which means that his stomach has an overgrowth of yeast that converts any carbohydrate he eats into alcohol. In other words, he gets drunk by eating bread. In 2010, a man named Gary Richmond was beaten into a coma and woke up with amnesia, forgetting his girlfriend of 26 years and his daughter. However, after just 3 years of waking up, he fell in love with his girlfriend again, and they actually got married in January of that year. How charming. A study conducted by the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2012 concluded that people who appear to be constantly distracted have greater working memory and sharper brains. This is because they can process more stimuli at the same time, which, in certain contexts, favors creativity and the ability to solve complex problems. Since the 1990s, Carmel, Indiana has been replacing all traffic light intersections with roundabouts. Since then, injury accidents have dropped by 80%, total accidents have dropped by 40%, and construction costs have decreased by $125,000 per intersection. There is a lake in the country of Palau called Jellyfish Lake, where jellyfish have evolved without stingers. These golden jellyfish are completely harmless to humans, and you can swim with them. Their isolation allowed them to lose their ability to sting, adapting to an environment without natural predators. In 1938, Walt Disney received an honorary Oscar for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The statuette he received came with 7 mini statuettes on a stepped base. How cute is that? The award was given in recognition of the film's impact as the first successful feature-length animated movie, marking a before and after in the history of cinema. Nintendo has accumulated so much money that it could operate with a deficit of $250 million per year and still survive until 2052. This figure reflects its large financial reserves, built through decades of success in video games, allowing it to withstand difficult periods without compromising its stability. In 2012, Amy Young and her son rescued Pudding, a tabby cat, from a shelter. That same day, Amy had a diabetic attack, and the cat saved her life by bringing her back to consciousness and then running to her son's room, jumping on him until he woke up to seek medical assistance. How amazing is that? So, adopt more animals. They could save your life. There is an artist named Brian Lai who has the unique ability to draw in negative. His technique consists of reversing light and shadow from the beginning, creating images that seem strange until they are carefully observed or their colors are inverted. This style requires great visual control and planning, as any mistake can break the final illusion. After being eliminated from the show Hell's Kitchen, contestants are immediately taken to psychiatric evaluations and then to a house where they are treated with back massages, haircuts, and manicures. This is due to the intensity of the show, which involves long hours, high pressure, and constant stress. So the production ensures participants recover physically and emotionally after leaving. Studies have shown that smoking hookah is not safer than smoking cigarettes, and, in fact, may cause the smoker to absorb more toxic substances. This is because sessions tend to last longer, increasing exposure to smoke, including carbon monoxide and other harmful substances, despite the belief that the water filters everything. After returning to Earth in 1969, the crew of Apollo 11, including Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, were placed in quarantine in a special facility for 3 weeks. As the first humans on the moon, it was not known whether they would bring back any mysterious lunar germs or not. There are completely black chickens in Indonesia, known as ayam samani. They have black feathers, black legs, black beaks and tongues, black combs, black meat, black bones, and even dark organs. This trait is due to a genetic condition called fibromelanosis, which causes extreme pigmentation throughout the body. Because of their rarity, they are highly valued and can reach high prices. Today, it is estimated that more than 1 billion people in the world live with obesity, while around 800 million suffer from chronic hunger. Although both figures can vary depending on the source and the year, they reflect a global paradox in which malnutrition exists at two extremes: excess and deficiency, often within the same countries and even communities. In 2007, a man named Mick Warren Madden designed a device called the Aquatic Stroller that allows you to take your fish for a walk. I am not joking. This invention consists of a small portable tank with wheels that allows fish to be transported safely while the water is oxygenated, and it was created more as a creative curiosity than as a commonly used product. In 2013, a man named Regilio Vanderbilt was kidnapped in front of his wife by 2 armed men. He returned 2 days later unharmed, but it was discovered that he had planned the kidnapping himself to go partying with his friends. Peachtree City in Georgia has a network of 90 miles of paths dedicated to pedestrians and golf carts. Most of the city owns golf carts that they use as an extra vehicle to get around for local transportation. This beautiful place is one of the many canola flower fields in China. During the blooming season, these landscapes turn a bright yellow that attracts thousands of tourists and photographers. In addition to their beauty, canola is an important crop for vegetable oil production in the country. Doctor Who was originally intended to be an educational series for children, with episodes set in the future to teach kids about science and episodes set in the past to teach them about history. In its early seasons, it included stories with basic scientific explanations and carefully recreated historical settings. Over time, it evolved toward a more adventure and science fiction-focused approach, although it retained educational elements in an indirect way. This is a desert cat. Adult cats look like small kittens, and babies look like, well, even smaller kittens. They are adapted to extreme climates, with large ears that help dissipate heat and a remarkable ability to survive with very little water. Employees who portrayed different cartoon characters at Disneyland never break character. They even receive special training sessions for signing autographs, so they can always sign in the style of the character they are portraying. In 1955, a plaster Buddha statue more than 600 years old was accidentally dropped while being moved, revealing that the plaster actually covered another statue made of solid gold. It is believed that the coating was placed centuries earlier to protect it from looting, hiding its true value for generations until its accidental discovery. Australia is home to golden silk orb weaver spiders, arachnids that are so large they can eat entire snakes up to 1.6 feet long. These spiders, known for their huge and strong webs, can trap not only insects but also small birds, bats, and even reptiles. Their silk is surprisingly strong and flexible, and it has been studied by scientists to develop stronger and lighter materials. Graphene is pure carbon in the form of an extremely thin, almost transparent sheet, only 1 atom thick, and it is the strongest material in the world. It is 1 million times thinner than paper, but 200 times stronger than steel. Noah Webster, the creator of the first American dictionary, learned 26 languages in order to understand and research the origins of the language of his own country, so he could write it. His work laid the foundation for modern American English, standardizing spelling and differentiating it from British English, which had a lasting impact on education and cultural identity in the United States. The Burj Al Arab Hotel in Dubai offers its guests 24-karat gold iPads during their stay. These devices are usually customized with the hotel's logo and are part of its strategy to provide an extreme luxury experience, where every detail is designed to impress and reinforce its reputation as one of the most exclusive hotels in the world. Despite having billions of dollars and being one of the richest businessmen in the world, the founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad, is notoriously frugal. He lives in a small house, eats at IKEA, takes the bus, and only flies in economy class. His austere lifestyle reflected his business philosophy of reducing costs and avoiding unnecessary expenses, which also influenced the company's culture. In the 1912 Olympic Games, a Japanese marathon runner named Shizuo Kanakuri abandoned the race and returned home without notifying the organizers, so he was considered missing in Sweden for 50 years. In 1966, he was invited to complete the marathon, with a total time of 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, and 5 hours. Ken McElroy, a known bully who terrorized residents of Missouri for years, was shot and killed in broad daylight in 1981 in front of dozens of witnesses in the town of Skidmore. Despite the large number of people present, no one claimed to have seen anything or identified the person responsible. The case, linked to Ken McElroy, remains unsolved more than 40 years later and is one of the most notorious examples of vigilante justice in the United States. Starbuck is a famous Canadian bull whose genetics are so desirable that his semen has sold for more than $25 million during his lifetime, in which he has sired more than 200,000 daughters. He was key in improving dairy cattle genetics, especially in the Holstein breed, influencing milk production and lineage quality in numerous countries. In 1916, an amendment to the Constitution was proposed that stated that the decision to go to war would be put to a national vote, and anyone who voted yes would be required to enlist in the United States Army. Fortunately, it did not pass. Yang Yuanqing, chief executive officer of Lenovo, received a bonus of $3 million as a reward for record profits in 2012, which he redistributed among approximately 10,000 employees of the company. He did exactly the same thing again in 2013. This gesture was widely recognized as a rare example of leadership in large corporations. Watson, IBM's artificial intelligence computer, learned to use profanity from Urban Dictionary. Because of that, it started speaking in a cheeky way, so scientists had to remove the entire Urban Dictionary database from its memory. When he died in 1955, Einstein refused surgery, saying, "I want to go when I want. It is in bad taste to prolong life artificially. I have done my part. It is time to go. I will do it elegantly." He died in Princeton after the rupture of an aortic aneurysm, and his decision reflected his personal stance on life, death, and individual autonomy in the face of medical intervention. During World War II, the story spread of two Japanese officers, Toshiaki Mukai and Tsuyoshi Noda, who supposedly competed to reach a certain number of kills in combat. Disturbingly, it was covered as a sporting event in Japanese newspapers, with regular updates on the score. Mike, the headless chicken, was a famous chicken from 1945 that was decapitated by a farmer for dinner but continued living for 18 more months. He survived because part of his brainstem remained intact, allowing him to keep breathing and be fed manually. During World War II, a 14-year-old boy named Jacqueline Lucas lied to join the Army and became the youngest Marine to receive a Medal of Honor. When he was 17 years old, he threw himself onto 2 live grenades to protect members of his squad and survived. In Turkmenistan, the government implemented in 1993 a policy that offered free water, gas, and electricity to the population. This system remained in place for years as part of a state subsidy model, although over time it was modified and eventually eliminated, marking a shift toward charging for these basic services. The deepest part of the ocean is the Challenger Deep, located in the Mariana Trench, with a depth of close to 36,100 feet. To understand how extreme it is to access this place, more than a dozen people have walked on the surface of the moon, while only a small number of explorers have descended to that point due to the enormous pressure and the technical challenges involved in reaching such depths. The American language was the official language of the state of Illinois from 1923 to 1969. In reality, it was more of a symbolic change in the name of the English language, driven by nationalist sentiments of the time, but it did not involve a different language or real modifications in its everyday use. In 2003, neurosurgeon and CNN medical correspondent Sanjay Gupta saved the life of Marine Jesus Vidania after he was shot in the head in Iraq. He did it by performing brain surgery using a Black& Decker drill bit. The banknote with the largest numerical denomination ever created was the 1 billion Hungarian pengu in 1946. Its value was a sextillion, that is, a 1 followed by 21 zeros. Even so, it was only worth 20 cents in United States currency. Hyperinflation is brutal. During that period, prices could double within hours, forcing the printing of ever larger bills until the currency was replaced by the forint to stabilize the economy. Queen Elizabeth did not need a passport to travel abroad, since all British passports are officially issued in her name. For this reason, she was the only person in the United Kingdom who could travel internationally without this document, while other members of the royal family did have to carry one like any citizen. A study published in the journal Marine Policy concluded that sharks kill 12 people a year, but humans kill 11,417 sharks per hour. This enormous difference reflects the impact of fishing and hunting on their populations, which has led many species to become endangered and has driven conservation campaigns worldwide. Girdling is the term used to describe the removal of a strip of bark from the circumference of a branch or the trunk of a tree. If the main trunk of a tree is girdled, it will die if it cannot regrow from above to close the wound. In 2011, Maureen Winders and her husband sued Bank of America for wrongfully foreclosing on their home and won. The case became especially notable when, after the bank failed to pay, the couple managed to seize assets from a branch, drawing media attention and exposing flaws within the banking system. The most well-known cut for a diamond is the brilliant cut. When it is done perfectly on a round diamond, something called the Cupid effect appears, which is a pattern of arrows and hearts that can be seen when light is shined through it. The Lion King was considered a B-level film during its production, as Disney's top animators were working on Pocahontas, which they considered an A-level film. Even so, the team in charge managed to create one of the studio's most successful movies, exceeding expectations and becoming an animated classic with major cultural and musical impact. It is possible to create a plant that grows tomatoes above the ground and potatoes below ground by grafting the stem of a tomato plant onto the trunk of a potato plant. Both belong to the same botanical family, which allows them to share nutrients through the graft. This type of combined plant has been commercially developed and can produce both crops at the same time in reduced spaces. The Solvay hut is one of the most dangerously located mountain cabins in the world, situated at 12,999 feet above sea level in Switzerland. It is on the route to the Matterhorn and is only used in emergency situations, as it does not offer basic amenities, and reaching it requires crossing extremely technical and exposed terrain. Lotso, the bear from Toy Story 3, was originally going to appear in the first movie, but the technology needed to create his fur was not available at the time, so it was postponed until the third film. By then, advances in animation allowed for more realistic textures, especially in complex materials like fur. Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, has such a dense atmosphere and low gravity that you could fly on it by flapping wings attached to your arms. Its air is composed mainly of nitrogen and is much thicker than Earth's, which makes lift easier. However, the temperatures are extremely low, making survival impossible without special protection. Between the years 1600 and 1800, lobsters used to be considered the cockroaches of the sea. They were fed to prisoners and servants and used as bait for fish. In some regions, there were even laws that limited how often they could be served to workers to prevent abuse. Over time, changes in transportation and cooking transformed them into a food considered a luxury. During World War II, the Soviet Union trained thousands of dogs to assist in military operations, including missions against tanks. These animals carried explosive devices and were directed toward enemy vehicles. However, the method proved to be ineffective and difficult to control, as some dogs became disoriented on the battlefield, which also created risks for their own troops. This is a golden tiger. They are the result of inbreeding between white and orange tigers kept in captivity. This unusual pattern is due to a recessive genetic variation that alters fur pigmentation, giving them a lighter tone with softer stripes. Because of their origin in selective breeding programs, they almost do not exist in the wild and are mostly found in zoos and private collections. Michael Crichton, author of Jurassic Park, believed his literature professor at Harvard was grading him unfairly. So to prove it, he submitted an essay by George Orwell and received a grade of B-. With this, he tried to highlight the subjectivity in academic evaluation, something that later influenced his critical perspective reflected in several of his works. During the Cold War, Russia continuously aimed multiple missiles at a highly trafficked building in the central courtyard of the Pentagon, which they believed was a top-secret meeting facility. It turned out that it was actually just a hot dog stand. This confusion was due to the large number of people who gathered there, which led to misinterpretations during a period of high geopolitical tension. In 2008, a Japanese man noticed that food was disappearing from his home, so he installed a webcam and discovered that a 58-year-old homeless woman had been living in his closet for a year. The woman would enter when the house was empty and managed to go unnoticed, making the case a surprising and widely discussed story. Humans are not suitable prey for great white sharks because their digestion is too slow to deal with a high proportion of bone compared to muscle and fat. In addition, these sharks usually prefer prey with higher energy content, such as seals, and many attacks on humans are considered exploratory rather than actual feeding attempts. This impressive sculpture is the Nelson Mandela Capture Site Monument in South Africa, located where he was arrested more than 50 years ago. It is made up of 50 steel columns ranging from 16.40 to 32.80 feet in height, and when viewed from a certain angle, his image comes into form. In 2006, a rare hybrid species of grizzly bear and polar bear called a pizzly bear or growler bear was confirmed in Canada. Global warming is causing polar bear habitats to melt, so they seek refuge elsewhere and end up mating with grizzlies. In 1962, the Central Intelligence Agency informed South African intelligence about the location of Nelson Mandela, which led to his arrest and to him spending 27 years in prison. This event took place in the context of the Cold War, when some governments viewed his movements as a political threat. Although, over time, Mandela would be recognized worldwide as a symbol of the fight for freedom. Colonel Sanders disliked so much what the KFC franchise had done to the food that he described it as the worst fried chicken he had ever tasted, and the gravy as wallpaper paste. After selling the company, he publicly criticized the quality of the products, believing they no longer followed his original standards. There is a dog named Faith who was born without front legs but learned to walk on her hind legs. The dog and her owner travel to military hospitals to show that even an animal with a severe disability can live a full life. Her story became widely known in media and television programs, inspiring many people in physical and emotional rehabilitation processes. There is a hidden beach in the Marietas Islands in Mexico. It was originally formed in 1900 by the Mexican government and used as a bombing site in preparation for World War I. Today, the only way to reach this beach is through a small opening in a cavern wall or by being lowered in by helicopter. A German author named Timur Vermes wrote a satirical novel in which Hitler wakes up in modern Berlin with no memory since 1945 and becomes a comedian. The book is titled Look Who's Back and was a major success in Germany, selling hundreds of thousands of copies. It was later adapted into a film that was also well received. Chefchaouen is a small town in northern Morocco, known for being almost entirely covered in blue paint. It is pretty cool. I want to visit that place. Its streets and buildings get that color from traditions that some associate with religious symbolism or the idea of keeping spaces cool, giving it a unique and very photogenic appearance. The longest time someone has survived on a raft after a shipwreck was 133 days, achieved by a Chinese man named Poon Lim in 1942. During that time, he managed to stay alive thanks to his ingenuity and the resources he found at sea. Years later, he lived a long life and passed away in 1991 at the age of 72. If you bought a PlayStation 5 in Brazil at launch, the price could far exceed 1,000 United States dollars due to high import taxes, tariffs, and logistics costs. In fact, it would be cheaper to buy a round-trip ticket from Brazil to the United States to purchase it there. Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight world champion, was stopped for speeding and fined $50, but he gave the officer $100, telling him to keep the change because he would be driving at the same speed again. Coyotes and badgers hunt together. Badgers dig out the prey and the coyote chases it. It is like a kind of hunting partnership. This cooperation increases the chances of success for both as they take advantage of different skills, and it has been documented in various regions of North America as a rare example of collaboration between different species. The Verrucht water slide, inaugurated in July 2014 in Kansas City, Kansas, was considered at the time the tallest in the world, with an impressive height of 167.32 feet and speeds exceeding 62.14 miles per hour. Its extreme design made it famous, but also controversial, and after a serious accident years later, the attraction was permanently closed and dismantled. In the early 1930s, a social movement called the technocracy movement became popular, although it eventually disappeared, which proposed replacing politics, politicians, and business leaders with scientists and engineers who could manage the economy. Its followers advocated measuring production and consumption based on energy and efficiency, seeking a more rational system, although its ideas were never implemented on a large scale. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt was shot before giving a speech. Noticing that it had not damaged his lungs because he was not coughing up blood, he proceeded to deliver a 90-minute speech. The bullet was slowed by an eyeglass case in the folded manuscript in his pocket, which likely prevented a fatal wound and allowed him to continue speaking to the audience. After his success in the Harry Potter films, Rupert Grint, who played Ron Weasley, bought a 1974 ice cream truck to fulfill his childhood dream of being an ice cream vendor. He uses it to drive around handing out free ice cream and popsicles to children. Impressive, but also a bit strange. A study conducted in 2014 on the happiest and least happy states in the United States, using 26 key metrics, determined that the happiest state was Utah, while the least happy was West Virginia. Factors such as income, health, social relationships, and emotional well-being influenced the results of this ranking. In 2014, a competitive eater named Molly Schuyler, who weighs only 126 pounds, won 4 eating contests in just 3 days. She ate a total of 363 chicken wings, 59 pancakes, 5 pounds of bacon, and 5 pounds of barbecue meat. Delicious. In North Korea, the Juche calendar is used, which begins counting years from the birth of Kim Il-sung in 1912. Therefore, the current year is expressed differently from the Gregorian calendar. As a result, the current year corresponds to Juche 114. There is a pet king penguin in Japan named Lala that is owned by the Nishimoto family. Every day it walks by itself into town with a backpack, picks up fish from the local market, and then walks back. This case became very popular on the internet and in Japanese media, standing out for the unusual behavior and the close relationship between the animal and its owners. In 1927, several million people sent petitions to the United States Congress to adopt the metric system, but the manufacturing industry opposed it due to the cost of conversion. The change required modifying machinery, standards, and entire processes, representing a considerable investment and helping to slow its implementation at the time. There's a side effect of sleep deprivation called microsleep, in which a person falls asleep for a few seconds or even a few minutes without realizing it. It is extremely dangerous and has in fact contributed to a large number of traffic accidents. So, sleep before driving. It is dangerous. In 2013, a man named Harrison Okene survived for 3 days at the bottom of the ocean inside a sunken ship after finding an air pocket. He was rescued by divers who were initially searching for bodies, and his case surprised experts due to human endurance in extreme conditions of cold, pressure, and darkness. In 1947, Sugar Ray Robinson, considered one of the greatest boxers of all time, hesitated to take part in a fight after having a disturbing dream about his opponent. He ultimately decided to enter the ring, and after the match, his rival suffered serious consequences that deeply affected the boxer. In 2007, a twin was born 34 minutes after her brother, but due to a daylight saving time adjustment, she was actually born 26 minutes before him. This case became interesting because, officially, the older sister appears as being born later in real time, but earlier in recorded time. Dennis Rader, known as the BTK case in Kansas, worked installing home security systems. Ironically, some people hired these services seeking greater protection in their homes, not knowing that he himself was linked to the crimes that caused concern in the community. In 2012, a 37-year-old baker named Francisca Pitcher created an incredibly realistic yellow snake cake for her 6-year-old daughter's birthday. It was made of sponge cake, took 3 days to build, and another 12 hours to decorate. The design included meticulous details such as hand-painted scales and a coiled shape that surprised those who saw it. In 2013, Google sent a single employee to an abandoned Japanese island called Gunkanjima to map it for Google Street View. The island was once the most densely populated place in the world, but now it is completely abandoned. And if it seems familiar, it is because it was the island used in the movie Skyfall. In a study conducted by Bay State Medical Center in Springfield, approximately 68% of people experience phantom vibration syndrome, a sensation in which they believe their phone is vibrating when it is not. Walt Disney planned his own city where everyone could be employed and work for Disney in some way. In exchange for paying rent, they would get a house and always be equipped with the latest technology. Can we still make this happen? Because it sounds amazing. Tap water in Canada is regulated with higher standards than bottled water. This is because public systems are subject to stricter controls and constant quality testing. In contrast, bottled water is often classified as a food product with different regulations, which has sparked debate about its true superiority. This is the famous Swedish ice hotel that is built every winter. After it melts in the spring, authorities in 2013 established a requirement to install fire alarms, even though the entire place is made of ice, just in case things like sleeping bags or pillows catch fire. If you do not identify as extroverted or introverted, you might be an ambivert, a person moderately comfortable with groups and social interactions, but who also enjoys time alone. This term is used to describe most people, since social behavior usually varies depending on context and situation. According to scientists, the average cumulus cloud weighs approximately 1,100,000 pounds. That is a very large cloud. Although they look light and fluffy, they are made up of millions of tiny water droplets suspended in the air, spread across a massive volume, which allows them to stay afloat thanks to rising air currents. A butt was a medieval unit of measurement for wine. Technically, a buttload of wine equals 125.47 gallons. This term has survived in modern language in a colloquial way, although most people are unaware of its historical origin as an actual unit of measure. In 2014, Budapest broke the world record for the tallest Lego tower ever built, made of 450,000 colorful bricks and topped with a large Hungarian Rubik's Cube. The structure measured 114 feet tall in front of St. Stephen's Basilica. In medieval Ireland between the 5th and 15th centuries, murderers were handed over to the victim's family as slaves if they did not pay a heavy fine to buy their freedom. Basically, they belonged to the family, which could legally kill the murderer if it wished. In 1770, the British Parliament passed a law that condemned the use of lipstick, establishing that any woman who seduced a man into marriage through cosmetics would be tried for witchcraft. Although it sounds extreme today, it reflects the beliefs and social norms of the time regarding appearance and deception. The keys to the most sacred site in Christianity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was built in the year 325 on the site where Christ is believed to have been crucified, are actually held by 2 Muslims, which has been a tradition since 1187. Soldier ants are used as natural sutures. Their mandibles are so strong that some people use them to close wounds by letting them bite the skin and then removing their bodies. This practice has been traditionally used in some regions, especially in environments without access to modern medicine, taking advantage of their ability to temporarily hold wounds together. To become a black cab driver in London, a person is expected to know 25,000 streets and 50,000 points of interest to pass an exam called the Knowledge. Applicants usually need 12 attempts over 34 months of preparation to pass. This process includes practical routes through the city and is considered one of the most demanding training programs in urban transport. During World War II, prisoners in Canadian war camps were treated so well that they were given games and entertainment, such as soccer tournaments and musical groups. In fact, when the war ended, many of them did not want to leave Canada. Albert Einstein's brain was preserved and dissected, both improperly and against his wishes. In addition, his eyeballs remain in a safe deposit box in New York City. What do we need his eyes for? I mean, what? The red mushrooms that appear in Nintendo's Mario games are based on a real species of mushroom called Amanita muscaria. They are known for their hallucinogenic properties and can distort the perceived size of objects. This is also the same mushroom referenced in Alice in Wonderland. The air inside potato chip bags is not air, but nitrogen, which helps keep them crispy and protects them during transport. This gas is inert, preventing oxidation and delaying spoilage, helping preserve the product's flavor and texture until it reaches the consumer. In the late 1970s, Richard Chase was a criminal known for committing several crimes in the United States. It was said that he only entered houses that were unlocked. He believed that if they were locked, it meant he was not welcome. But if they were open, he saw it as an invitation to enter. That is creepy. Vancouver in Canada experimented with optical illusions on its roads to reduce driver speed, such as one that appears to show a girl chasing a ball. These interventions aim to trigger an immediate reaction in drivers, forcing them to slow down when perceiving a potential danger, thus improving road safety. Yasuo Takamatsu, a 58-year-old Japanese man, began learning to dive in 2014 to find the remains of his wife after she was swept away by the tsunami that struck Japan in 2011. The last time he spoke with her, she told him she wanted to go home, and he wants to fulfill that wish for her. The phrase, "the luck of the Irish," did not originally mean extreme good fortune. In fact, it originated as an expression used by miners in a sarcastic way, as if to say that only by pure luck and not intelligence could they succeed. In the 1960s, Alcatraz was the only federal prison at the time that offered hot showers to its inmates. The logic behind this was that prisoners accustomed to hot water would not be able to withstand the freezing waters of the San Francisco Bay during an escape attempt. The Canadian Postal Service has assigned the postal code H0H0H0 to the North Pole, where anyone can send a letter to Santa Claus. Each year, around 1 million letters are sent to Santa, and all are answered in the same language in which they were written. Ioannis Ikonomou, the chief translator of the European Commission, can speak 32 different languages. His native language is Greek, and he is the only internal translator at the European Commission trusted to translate classified Chinese documents. It is estimated that there are approximately 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor, with treasures worth billions. Many of them have not yet been explored due to depth and difficulty of access, making the ocean one of the places with the greatest amount of hidden history yet to be discovered. In 2014, New York City announced plans to convert all its old phone booths into Wi-Fi access points. This project led to the Link NYC network, which offers free internet connection, calls, and digital services, transforming outdated infrastructure into a modern urban connectivity tool. In 2010, a man got lost in the forests of northern Saskatchewan and cut power lines to attract attention in hopes of being rescued. And it worked. The outage triggered a rapid response from authorities, which ultimately allowed them to locate him, although it also sparked debate over the risks and damage caused. In 2013, Sean Conway became the first man to swim the entire length of Great Britain. The journey of 870 miles took him 135 days, 90 of which he spent in the water. The rest he spent avoiding bad weather and resting. In Japan, for decades there was a law that restricted dancing in nightclubs after midnight, leading to strict supervision of clubs and even police inspections. However, this regulation was reformed in the 2010s, allowing dancing under certain conditions, so it is no longer illegal as it once was. In 2008, a businessman from Abu Dhabi named Saeed Abdul Ghaffur Khoury spent $14.3 million at an auction to buy a license plate with the number 1, making it the most expensive license plate in the world. I wish I had money to spend on things like that. Switzerland has enough nuclear shelters to house 114% of its population. In fact, it is a legal requirement for Swiss residents to have access to a protected place that can be reached quickly from their residence. This policy originated during the Cold War and continues to this day, with shelters integrated into residential and public buildings designed to withstand explosions, radiation, and ensure basic supplies in case of emergency. In 2012, after spending 5 days in prison, a Korean man named Choi Ga-bok, who had practiced yoga for 23 years, escaped by sliding through a small food slot at the bottom of his cell door while the guards were asleep. He was 5 feet 4 inches tall, and the slot measured 6 by 18 inches. In Switzerland, it is illegal to have just one guinea pig because the animals are social and need the company of others. This rule is part of animal welfare laws that aim to prevent the isolation of social species, requiring owners to keep them in pairs or groups to ensure their emotional well-being. During winter, if you fill balloons with water and add food coloring, then leave them to freeze and remove the balloon, you can create large spheres of ice. This type of decoration has become popular in places with very low temperatures, as it allows for visually striking effects in gardens or open spaces. There is a fruit called black sapote, or chocolate pudding fruit, which, when fully ripe, tastes like chocolate pudding, is low in fat, and has approximately 4 times more vitamin C than an orange. There is a travel agency in Tokyo called Unagi Travel that, for a fee, will take your stuffed animal on vacation without you. The service includes photos and updates of the trip, allowing owners to experience it in an indirect and creative way. A 7-year-old child was suspended from school for biting a Pop-Tart into the shape of a mountain, which officials confused with a weapon. The case generated controversy and debate about zero-tolerance policies in schools, especially when applied excessively. Luis Garavito, considered one of the most notorious criminals in his country, was responsible for numerous crimes that generated a major social impact. His case drew attention because, due to the laws in place at the time, his sentence was reduced to just over 2 decades, sparking a broad debate about justice and the penalties applied. In 2007, animal caretakers at the Oregon Zoo walked an elephant named Chandra around the zoo, where she stopped at the sea lion exhibit and befriended a sea lion named Gus. In 2013, a lost Egyptian city called Heraklion was discovered underwater after having remained missing for more than 1,000 years in the Mediterranean Sea. It was an important commercial and religious center in ancient times, and its discovery allowed the recovery of statues, temples, and remains of ships that had been hidden under sediment for centuries. In 2005, the company Golden State Fence in Southern California was hired to build part of the fence that separates the United States and Mexico. However, ironically, just 1 year later, in 2006, they were fined $5 million after it was discovered that they had hired illegal immigrant workers to build part of the fence. The ancient Babylonians did mathematics in base 60, not base 10, which gave us 60 seconds in a minute, 360 degrees in a circle, among other things. This system was very useful for dividing quantities, since 60 has many divisors, making calculations in astronomy and trade easier. This is Big Jake, the largest horse in the world, from Smoky Hollow Farm in Michigan. He measures 6.89 feet tall. His impressive size made him a celebrity, and despite his height, he was known for his calm temperament, participating in public events and activities with visitors. The sun and the moon appear to be the same size in the sky due to a coincidence. The moon is 400 times smaller, but also 400 times closer. This alignment allows phenomena such as total solar eclipses, where the moon almost perfectly covers the sun from Earth's perspective. The average tree is made up of 99% dead cells, and only 1% is actually alive at any given time. Most of it corresponds to the xylem, which transports water and provides structural support, while the living cells are concentrated in thin layers such as the cambium and phloem, responsible for growth and nutrient circulation. For years, an Indian man named Rajesh Kumar Sharma has taught children from slums living under a metro bridge 5 days a week for 2 hours a day. He leaves his job at a shop to teach more than 140 children who otherwise could not afford an education. Vern Troyer, the actor who played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies, had to perform all of his own stunts because, at 2 feet 8 inches tall, there was no stunt double of his size who could replace him. When you get so drunk that you lose consciousness, you are not actually forgetting anything, because your brain was not recording the information in the first place. This happens because alcohol affects memory formation in the hippocampus, preventing experiences from being stored in long-term memory, which explains so-called memory blackouts. This boat, created in 2010 by French artist Julien Berthier, was made from an abandoned yacht designed at a 45-degree angle so that it appears to be perpetually sinking. The work, titled Love, Love, plays with visual perception and has been exhibited in different ports, becoming a striking piece of contemporary art. In 1999, an Iraqi man named Sam Isho moved to Australia and used the welfare system as income. 10 years later, in 2009, he became successful and wrote a check for $18,000 to the Australian government, representing every dollar they had given him. Marshmallows exist because of sore throats. For centuries, the sap of the marshmallow plant has been used to relieve pain. In the 19th century, it was mixed with egg whites and sugar for children with sore throats, and the recipe was so tasty that people turned it into a candy. In the early 1990s, a young Bill Nye wrote for a comedy show in Seattle called Almost Live. One day they needed to fill 6 minutes, and the host suggested he talk about his passion for science, calling him Bill Nye the Science Guy. The nickname stuck. The Pentagon spends around $300,000 a year to study the body language of world leaders such as Vladimir Putin. These analyses help interpret gestures, postures, and expressions in diplomatic meetings with the goal of anticipating intentions or reactions during complex international negotiations. In 2007, Joshua Bell, an award-winning violinist and conductor, carried out an experiment by posing as a street musician. Nearly 1,100 people walked past him without stopping. He earned only $31.17 that day. However, 2 days earlier, he had performed in a theater with tickets costing $100 each. The violin he used on the street was worth $3.5 million. The first president of Zimbabwe was President Canaan Banana, or simply President Banana. How appealing! He governed after the country's independence in 1980 and played an important role as a symbolic figure, while executive power mainly rested with the prime minister in a political system that later changed over time. There is a museum in Europe called the Museum of Broken Relationships, which exclusively displays objects that were meaningful to former couples with broken hearts. Each piece is accompanied by a short, anonymous story explaining its emotional value, turning the place into a mix of art and personal memory that connects with visitors from around the world. In 1918, pink was the color for boys because it was considered a stronger color, while delicate blue was reserved for girls. It is incredible how things change. This idea was influenced by European traditions and publications of the time, but over time, color associations shifted due to commercial and cultural trends until reaching what is now considered normal. Al Capone got his famous scars in an incident that occurred in his youth after making an inappropriate comment to a woman. The situation led to a confrontation with a relative of hers, who reacted violently and caused the facial wounds that later gave him his nickname. In 2000, the Ku Klux Klan adopted a stretch of highway near St. Louis, so the state of Missouri responded by renaming it the Rosa Parks Highway. The decision was seen as a symbolic way to counter the group's message with a tribute to a key figure in the civil rights movement. Every spring, a set of 21 swings is installed near a bus stop in the entertainment district of Montreal. Each one acts as a musical instrument, and as people swing, pre-recorded sounds fill the air. Workers in Amazon distribution centers can walk up to 11.0 miles per shift, picking an order every 33 seconds. This demanding pace reflects the level of efficiency the company seeks in its logistics operations, also relying on automated systems to coordinate orders and optimize time. In 1861, a slave named Robert Smalls fought for his freedom by taking control of a Confederate ship and delivering it to the Union. He eventually became a major general and even bought the original house where he had been enslaved, reuniting with his mother. There is a town in the Netherlands with a name that is difficult to pronounce that has no roads and can only be accessed by boat, which is why it is known as the Venice of the Netherlands. It is Giethoorn, where canals replace streets and houses are connected by small wooden bridges, creating a peaceful environment where the main form of transportation is quiet boats. There is a species of tiny and very cute antelope called the dik-dik. They are named after the sound they make when alarmed and only grow to about 15.7 inches in height. They live in arid areas of eastern Africa and usually form monogamous pairs that defend their territory. Despite their size, they are very agile and can detect predators very quickly thanks to their sharp sense of hearing. An ancient Persian poet told the story of a king who asked wise men to make him a ring that would make him happy when he was sad and sad when he was happy. They gave him a ring with the phrase, "This too shall pass," the origin of the famous expression. Insurance companies have blacklisted Jackie Chan and anyone who works on his stunt team. This means that if someone gets injured while on the set of a Jackie Chan movie, he has to pay for their recovery treatment. This is the metallic chrysalis, or outer casing of the Mechanitis butterfly from Costa Rica. Its shiny, golden appearance acts as a defense mechanism, as it can confuse predators by making it look like a drop of metal or water. This type of camouflage is a common strategy in many insect species. When a new building for Scotland Yard, one of the most well-known police agencies in the world, was being constructed, the dismembered torso of a woman was found. The case was called the Whitehall Mystery and was never solved, which means that Scotland Yard was built over an unsolved crime scene. This is a Japanese dwarf flying squirrel, possibly one of the most adorable creatures in the world. Despite its name, it does not truly fly, but glides between trees thanks to a membrane that connects its limbs. It is nocturnal and very difficult to see in the wild, which makes it even more special for those who manage to observe it. There's an amusement park in Las Vegas called Dig This, where you can drive construction equipment over a giant sandbox. I want to do that. At this place, visitors can operate real excavators and bulldozers under supervision, performing activities such as digging trenches or piling dirt, making it a unique and very popular experience among adults and heavy machinery enthusiasts. In 1949, the company Prince Motor in Japan developed an electric car that could travel 124.27 miles on a single charge. This type of advancement arose in part due to fuel shortages after the war, which encouraged electric alternatives. Although it did not become popular at the time, it shows that electric mobility has much older roots than it may seem. In Japan, there are owl cafes where you can interact with live owls while enjoying a drink or food. These places emerged as an extension of popular animal-themed cafes and usually have strict interaction rules to protect the birds. However, they have also sparked debate about animal welfare, since owls are nocturnal and sensitive to stress. When Breakout was created for Atari, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak agreed to split the payment equally. Atari gave Jobs $5,000, but he told Wozniak that he had received $700, giving him only $350. Philani Deladla is a homeless man from Johannesburg, South Africa, known as the pavement bookworm. He survives by reviewing books for people who pass by on the street and sells them the book if they like it. The Vostochnaya metro station in Moscow accepts 30 squats as payment for a metro ticket as an incentive to encourage more exercise. This initiative was part of a temporary campaign to promote healthy habits among citizens, using technology that tracked movements and rewarded physical effort in a creative way. In 2012, Walmart abandoned a massive store of 124,490 square feet in McAllen, Texas. The city turned it into the largest single-story public library in the United States, and it has even won awards. A man named Ramon Artagaveitia survived a shipwreck in 1871, but 41 years later, when he traveled by sea again, he died in the sinking of the Titanic. After his first experience, he developed a strong fear of the ocean and only agreed to travel again due to family insistence, leaving a tragic story marked by fate. National Geographic star Casey Anderson has a pet grizzly bear named Brutus. The bear was adopted in 2002 when he was a newborn cub, and in 2008, he served as the best man at Casey's wedding. Seriously. China introduced the concept of a sustainable city known as Great City, designed to house about 80,000 people and drastically reduce environmental impact. The project proposed eliminating dependence on cars and optimizing resource use, with estimates including much lower energy and water consumption, as well as a significant reduction in waste and emissions, although it has not yet been fully realized as originally announced. Cats are one of the few animals that domesticate themselves and approach humans on their own terms. This process is believed to have started thousands of years ago when early felines approached human settlements to hunt rodents, benefiting both sides without direct intervention. Unlike other domesticated animals, they retain much of their independent behavior and preserve highly developed hunting skills. There is a lake in Australia called Lake Disappointment that was named and discovered by Frank Hahn in 1897, who expected to find fresh water but instead found salt water. This lake is actually a temporary saline system that fills after rainfall, and its arid and remote surroundings reflect the harsh conditions of the Australian interior. Every year, Thailand celebrates a festival called Loi Krathong, in which thousands of floating lanterns are released into the sky as a tradition. This event symbolizes letting go of the negative and starting anew, while people also place small floating offerings in the water, creating one of the most impressive visual spectacles in the country. In Finland, babies sleep in cardboard boxes. Seriously, expectant mothers are given starter kits by the state filled with clothes, sheets, toys, and even a small mattress to place inside the box and use it as a bed. It is a tradition that has continued since the 1930s. This is an image of Marilyn Manson without makeup. Although he is known for his provocative and theatrical aesthetic, his natural appearance is much more understated, which surprises many fans. Throughout his career, his image has been a key part of his artistic identity and his impact on popular culture. 1 pound of any combination of dimes, quarters, and United States half dollars is worth $20. This is because these coins were originally designed with very precise metal proportions and weight, which made their total value match when grouped by weight. Although they no longer contain silver today, many still maintain similar dimensions, so this curious equivalence still works in practice. Intel has employed futurism experts such as Brian David Johnson, whose job was to anticipate how technology and daily life might evolve over the next 10 or 15 years. Through trend analysis and scenario planning, he helped the company prepare for future changes. The United States Embassy, located in Baghdad, Iraq, is the largest and most expensive embassy in the world, covering more than 257 acres and costing more than $750 million. The complex includes housing, offices, recreational areas, and advanced security systems, functioning almost like a small, fortified city within the Iraqi capital. In ancient Athens, the world's first democracy, there was a process called ostracism, in which, once a year, people voted for the politician they considered most harmful to democracy, and that person was exiled for 10 years. The vote was written on fragments of pottery called ostraca, and the measure did not involve losing property, but rather preventing excessive power and protecting political stability. In 1998, a woman named Glynn Teresa Keating disappeared while awaiting trial for causing another person's death in a drunk driving accident. She was arrested 15 years later after boasting in a bar that she had escaped the crime. A study conducted in 2011 by Angela Duckworth showed that intelligence quotient tests can be affected by motivation. By promising subjects monetary rewards, she found that the higher the reward, the higher they scored on the test. In Old and Middle English, the word door or door was used to refer to certain insects, especially beetles or bumblebees. From this comes Dumbledore, an Old English word meaning bumblebee, popularized centuries later as the name of the character in the Harry Potter series. There is a goat in Utah named Freckles that had spider genes implanted when it was an embryo and is now known as the spider goat. She produces spider silk proteins in her milk, which are used to make biosilk, a material stronger than Kevlar. This development was carried out by scientists in biotechnology laboratories for medical and military purposes, as biosilk is lightweight, strong, and useful for sutures, regenerative tissues, and high-strength materials. When asked about his intelligence quotient, Stephen Hawking replied, "I have no idea. People who boast about their intelligence quotient are losers." With this response, he made it clear that he valued thinking and curiosity more than numbers, reinforcing his critical stance toward such measurements. In 1999, Lena Howe, a physicist at Harvard, became the first person to slow light to just 56 feet per second using a machine called a Bose-Einstein condensate. Just 2 years later, she managed to stop light completely. The Pythagorean cup, also known as the cup of greed, is a cup designed to spill its contents if too much wine is poured, thus encouraging moderation. Its function is based on a clever siphon system hidden inside, which empties all the liquid if a certain level is exceeded, turning it into a practical lesson against greed. When ants die, they release a chemical that tells other ants to move the body to a kind of cemetery. If this chemical is sprayed on a live ant, the other ants will treat it as dead, regardless of what it does. This behavior helps maintain the hygiene of the colony, preventing disease, and is part of a highly organized pheromone-based communication system. Seattle, Washington is home to the Beacon Food Forest, an urban park filled with hundreds of edible plants such as vegetables, fruit trees, and more. It is the largest free food forest on public land in the United States. The project is maintained by volunteers and promotes free access to fresh food, as well as community education on sustainable urban agriculture. After needing a blood donation when he was young, an Australian man named James Harrison began donating blood as soon as he turned 18. Surprisingly, it was discovered that he has a rare antibody in his blood that cures rhesus disease, and since then he has donated blood more than 1,000 times, saving an estimated 2.4 million babies from the disease. The Shangri-La Hotel in China set a record with the largest ball pits ever created, measuring 82.02 by 41.34 feet and containing 1 million balls. Yes, Do not lose your keys in there. These types of installations are usually designed to create visual impact and attract visitors, combining entertainment with marketing strategies that quickly go viral on social media. In Mexico, artists such as painters, sculptors, and graphic artists can pay their taxes by donating pieces of art they create to the government. This program, managed by the Tax Administration Service, has made it possible to build a large public collection of contemporary art that is preserved and displayed in different cultural venues across the country. This is a painting by the artist Joan Miró called Painting, which sold in 2012 for 23.5 million euros. I am in the wrong business. The work is part of his surrealist style, characterized by simple forms and vivid colors that, despite their apparent simplicity, reach high value in the art market. There is an insect called the tree lobster that is almost the size of a human hand. It can only be found in one place, on the massive mountainous remains of an old volcano called Ball's Pyramid off the coast of Australia. That is a funny name for an island. John Lasseter, one of the three original founders of Pixar, was fired from Disney for trying to create three-dimensional animated images. Lucasfilm hired him shortly afterward for his innovation, and later Disney bought Lucasfilm and Pixar for billions of dollars. The first documented attempt at human flight with artificial wings dates back to the 6th century in China, during the reign of Gao Yang. According to historical records, prisoners were forced to use kite-like devices to test whether they could glide. The Singing Tree is a wind-powered sound sculpture located in Burnley, England, and it was designed by architects Mike Tonkin and Anna Liu. Every time you sit beneath it, you will hear a different melody depending on the wind that day. In 1951, a poor woman named Henrietta Lacks died of cervical cancer, but her tumor cells were extracted and later discovered to be the first human cells that could thrive in a laboratory. Her cells have been the subject of more than 74,000 studies, many of which have provided deep insights into cell biology, cancer, vaccines, and cloning. Walt Disney holds the record for the most Academy Awards won by a single person, with a total of 22. In addition, he received several honorary awards, cementing his legacy as one of the most influential figures in the history of film and animation. His productions set technical and narrative standards, and his studio drove innovations such as the use of color and synchronized sound in animation. The children's book, Where the Wild Things Are, was originally titled Where the Wild Horses Are. However, the author and illustrator Maurice Sendak ended up changing the name after realizing he had no idea how to draw horses. United States President Lyndon B. Johnson had an amphibious car, the Amphicar, and used to scare his guests by driving toward a lake while shouting that the brakes had failed. In reality, the vehicle was designed to travel both on land and in water, so there was no real danger. This prank became one of his most remembered anecdotes and reflected his peculiar sense of humor. Author Ian McEwan once helped his son write an essay about one of his own novels called Enduring Love, but the teacher disagreed with his interpretation and gave his son a low grade. The case became known as a curious example of how even the creator of a work can be questioned in an academic setting. The Savannah is the largest breed of domestic cat. It looks like a small leopard but behaves like a dog. It can weigh up to 39.68 pounds, jump up to 8 feet high, and can be trained to walk on a leash and play fetch. Its origin comes from the cross between domestic cats and the African serval. The Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Indonesia determined that a single manta ray, if captured and killed, is worth between $40 and $500. However, they also determined that if they are kept alive, they are worth up to $1 million in tourism revenue. So they created the largest manta ray sanctuary in the world. On their first day of school, children in Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic are given a cardboard cone filled with toys and sweets called a Schultüte. This tradition is more than 200 years old and symbolizes the beginning of a new stage, while also helping children face that day with excitement and less nervousness. During World War II, Adolf Hitler considered extreme plans as part of his strategy against the Soviet Union. Among them, there were ideas to destroy key cities such as Moscow, and even transform the area through large projects, such as the creation of an artificial lake. In 2006, the FBI planted a spy in a mosque in Southern California and disguised him as a radical Muslim to eliminate potential threats. However, it backfired, as the Muslims in the mosque ended up reporting him to the FBI for being a potentially dangerous extremist. When Will Ferrell met Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Chad Smith, he looked him up and down and said, "You are very handsome," and then walked away. Both share a physical resemblance that has led to jokes among fans for years, even appearing together on television shows to play with a confusion between their identities. DC Comics published an alternate universe where Bruce Wayne dies instead of his parents. In it, Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, and Martha Wayne goes insane and becomes the Joker. This story is part of the arc known as Flashpoint, where an altered timeline drastically changes the fate of many characters. This is a Caucasian shepherd dog. Males can reach up to 198 pounds and are a popular dog breed in Russia, bred to hunt bears. They have also been historically used as livestock guardian dogs in mountainous regions, where their size, strength, and dense coat allow them to withstand extreme climates and face predators such as wolves. The AT&T Stadium in Texas, formerly known as Cowboy Stadium, consumes more electricity in a single day than all of Liberia. This fact is often cited to illustrate the enormous energy consumption of modern sports infrastructure, although it also depends on events, lighting, and specific usage on any given day. Aside from archival images of historical figures, Stephen Hawking is the only person to date who has played himself in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He appeared in a scene alongside holographic versions of other famous scientists, making his participation a very memorable moment within the franchise. According to NASA, nuclear energy prevented an average of 1.8 million deaths between 1971 and 2009 as a result of lower air pollution due to reduced coal use. These estimates are based on models that compare scenarios with and without nuclear energy, considering respiratory and cardiovascular diseases associated with emissions from traditional power plants. Penguin legs are actually longer than they appear. They only look short because of the amount of feathers covering them. Oh, and they have knees. These limbs are adapted for swimming with great efficiency, as their bones are denser than those of other birds, which helps them stay underwater and dive to greater depths with ease. Hippopotamuses like to lick crocodiles. They do not pose a threat, so crocodiles tolerate it. This behavior has been observed in African rivers where both species share habitat. And although hippos can be very aggressive, in these interactions they usually appear curious or calm, creating unusual moments of coexistence between two normally dangerous animals. France is the only country in Europe that is fully self-sufficient in basic food production. This is largely due to the diversity of its climate and the extent of its agricultural land, which allows for the cultivation of a wide variety of products. In addition, it has a strong agricultural policy that has boosted its production and export capacity for decades. Adam Rayner, an Austrian man, is the only person in medical history to have been classified as both a dwarf and a giant in his lifetime. He measured 3.8 feet on his 21st birthday and was classified as a dwarf, but by the time he died at the age of 51, he measured 7.7 feet tall due to a growth spurt.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.